Hey, Husker fans, this is the last non-game week Pick Six podcast for a while. It's going to be great. This is Evan Bland with Tom Shatel and Sam McKewon. The heavy hitters, as you would say, Sam. You guys are the real heavy hitters. Mm-hmm. That's how that goes.
Heavyweights.
Heavyweights. Sure. I mean, unbeaten, I think, in the eyes of many. Here we are. It's late August. This is almost game week. We're going to get into some volleyball today. We're going to talk some bold predictions, not records, not obvious things, but maybe some bold predictions. And we're going to get onto some single-digit chat as well. Nebraska put that out today, so we can dive into that. Tom, I thought what you said something earlier this week that kind of was eye-opening. Colorado's 2 weeks away.
That's I thought of that yesterday driving down there, and I said, "You want to hear something crazy? Colorado's in 2 weeks." I mean,
it's sneaking up.
Like this big thing that's way out there somewhere. We talk about once in a while. No, it's in 2 weeks. There'll be a game next week. So, I'm sure people are already aware of that. They're probably not thinking it's crazy. It's just something an old sports writer does. Hey, wait a minute, it's here. So, but yeah, in 2 weeks we'll be writing about Dion and all that stuff. So. And we'll have a game under their belts.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit last week, Sam. But like we're toward the end of fall camp here. These are the final days of training camp. They move into game prep here coming up. Do they need a game? Does Nebraska need a game, or has this been a valuable time? Maybe even those extra few days without a week zero to kind of get things where they want to be.
I think it's tremendously valuable to be able to practice and to maybe prepare for what the season's going to be. I think there's still battles that are being had in terms of positions. Javen Wright's injury creates a conversation at linebacker. Mekhi Bear's going to answer that question. I think he'll be your other starter. But now that brings Vincent Shavers into the conversation, more Stephon Thompson into the conversation. I think the single-digit thing answers to some degree what Nebraska's going to do in its secondary, although not entirely. And then running back. I think some of the most illuminating comments in camp have been made by Matt Rule and E.J. Barthel about the running backs. Because last year, you might recall, Evan, most of the conversation being, I feel really good about our group. I think we have one of the best rooms in the Big Ten. How has that conversation shifted? Well, in year two, it's we want a couple of guys to break away. We want guys to make plays. I think you're seeing the step two of the Rule culture starting to come into place. Like, we are going to actually build you up early, and then we are going to ask even more of you in year two. And I think that's been interesting to watch. That running back conversation and then the receiver conversation, I think, have been really interesting.
Yeah, last year's standard isn't good enough for this year's standard. That kind of thing.
The price
that they talk
changes
about
each day. It's
right.
Market price.
Yeah, right. So you mentioned the single digits thing. I thought that was interesting. And first of all, is single digits the new black shirt question in the fall? Right? It always used to be one of the black shirts coming out. I don't know how much of an appetite there is for that anymore, in the sense of, like, the starters are going to get it. There's a pretty good idea of who those are. Is the single digit thing, does that pique your interest more than the black shirt stuff now?
Oh, I mean, this is year two. I guess I wasn't. I didn't know when it was coming, and I hadn't really thought about it. And I mean, those are things you think about when you're not winning. And I think when they start winning, and they do it every year, then it's just, okay, this is going to come. Yes, it'll always be sort of this, okay, who's got it? Who's going to do it? But at this stage in the program, you don't know sometimes who's going to, because the leaders have not identified themselves. The stars have not identified themselves. I mean, some have, but a lot of them, So, yeah, I think it's sort of this curiosity. It's kind of a fun thing to do. But when you start winning other things, you think about other things. So, but I didn't see quarterback yesterday with the same goal, and I was okay with that. I thought, let's make him earn it. He doesn't need that yet. I give him something to shoot for, right? He seems to have been handed a little bit already by a lot of people that he's going to do this and that, and so I was okay with it. But a lot of defense.
Incidentally, it looks like Malachi Coleman's moving to number 11 from 15, so it looks like Dylan Raiola is going to be able to keep that number 15 on the edge.
Well, yeah.
You bet he is.
That surprised you?
It's just it lingered into the middle of training camp. That's all.
Yeah.
I wonder. They surely worked out some kind of an agreement there.
I thought Coleman might take 80, but he took 11. Who lost 11? I can't even remember.
That was Demetrius Bell,
who's
hurt this year.
So he can play for Bell.
Right.
That's great.
So here's.
Yeah, but I think Raiola's 15.
Let me give you the list of the single-digit guys. The new ones: Jamari Butler's 1, Marquise Buford's 3, Jamal Banks is 4, Tommy Hill is 6, and Malcolm Hartzog is 7. And that goes with Nash Huntmaker, who's back, Isaac Gifford, John Bullock, Deshaun Singleton, and Ty Robinson. Sam, I'm curious, how much or how concerning is it that only one offensive player has a single digit and that guy has been on campus with the program less than a year?
That's a great question. We don't know about the offensive linemen. Maybe a couple of those guys got them, but they can't wear them, so to speak. And I'm sure Rule will explain that. So there's probably a couple of them there, but it's an interesting conversation for sure. It's a team vote, and my understanding is that a lot of the guys on the defense are just really well respected. And maybe the one, because our boss, Rachel, listens to the podcast, and she asked me how many of them I thought had I predicted ahead of time. And the one that I didn't, but in hindsight, and I told her this, I thought I probably should have, was Hartzog. I didn't think Hartzog was going to get one, but if I really thought about it, I'm like, Malcolm Hartzog is one of the most respected guys on the team. He's undersized. He's tough as nails. He comes from a very small town. He had to earn everything he got. So I think there's a component to the single digit thing of you have my respect. You have we see you and we admire the work you're doing. I don't know that those are the 10 best players on the team, but I think these are the 10 guys that have earned our respect to this great a deal. And then you're not necessarily splitting votes, and it's possible that the 2 running backs split votes. By that I mean Emmett Johnson and Ramir. It's possible that that can happen sometimes, and so I think that's probably part of the conversation. Is a lot of guys just see Tommy Hill and they respect the hell out of Tommy Hill because Tommy Hill was basically they weren't trying to run him off the team, but they basically took him away from his job, and he had to go start at the bottom and go all the way back up to the top. And now this morning, according to ESPN, he's a potential first-round draft pick. Think about that. This is a guy that was running pass routes against Purdue in 22 in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And now he's a potential first-round pick.
There's your development.
Yeah. So, I think that's probably part of the conversation. As it relates to Blackshirts, Evan, to me, one of the best stories is always the first time a guy gets one. Because they put that thing in the locker, and I remember the Jack Anguish one where he basically looked at it, and you could tell. He'd spent his whole life waiting for that moment. And that was pretty cool. So when they get him the first time, I think that's about one of the better stories because that's the coach is saying you're a starter.
You made it.
And who doesn't want to start, right? So I like the first time black shirts. The guys that have it for the third time are less of a story to me.
I thought it was fine. I thought it made sense. The defense should be way ahead of the offense right now. That's how it's going to be going into the season. A lot of the defensive guys have been here. They've been through it. They're back. They're not thinking. They're just playing, right? And that's what you see early in camp. Guys making plays. Guys playing with a lot of confidence. Offense right now, there's a lot of playmakers on the board. We don't know who's who yet, and they may not know who's who yet. Again, I wasn't surprised to not see Raiola out there. I know a lot of this is a leadership and respect, and he's gonna get that, but he's gonna earn that too. He may that locker room may be his room, but I'm not sure it's gonna be his room right now, and I'm not sure it should be. So. I think it reflects what we're going to see early in the season. The defense is ahead. The offense has got to find playmakers who's going to step up, who's going to pass pro. Now, could there have been like a Ben Scott or maybe a Turner Corcoran? Yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised to see one of the linemen who have been around to do that. But the fact that the who was the offensive guy, Banks?
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that he just got here, that speaks a lot about him. So I think that's a good sign.
I agree.
As far as the Blackshirts, a lot of people make fun of us for asking that question, and certain radio shows always. I get it. At times we went overboard, and again, it was a product. When the question about Blackshirts stands out, it's because you got nothing else to really talk about. So, but by God, that should be one of the great things every year. I don't care if I make fun of it or not, but the day they hand out the Blackshirts should be a social media video moment. Go in the locker room, follow those guys around. It's you got to have every program has got to have those kind of cool traditions. At least the best programs do, and that should be one for Nebraska every year. They should be proud of it. They should advertise it. But again, once you start winning, well, other things to ask. But it's a thing that I think rules should stand up and tell us, when it happens, and then roll those guys out for interviews, and put all that stuff on video.
It is interesting because, you think about when Eric Chenander was the defensive coordinator, he wore the skull and crossbones hat and really seemed to dive all into the history of it. I didn't get the sense that it was that way as much with Tony White. It kind of felt like they wanted to make their own identity a little bit more.
Who used to, I don't say he used to make fun of it, but who he thought it was overblown was the defensive master himself, Coach Pelini. Bo Pelini thought it was overblown.
Well, Bob Diaco wore the Blackshirts pocket square.
Who? Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
That was something too.
I remember him
vaguely. Bo messed with the tradition. He did, and he had some good defenses, and then they got cute with it. I guess Zach Bowman technically started that by turning in his black shirt halfway through the 2007 season, but Bo messed with it. He didn't give it to him right away. Remember, in 2008, got the question, and then in 2009, I don't know, are you going to take away their black shirt?
Well, maybe that's where it all started.
I'm going to give it to him. I'm going to take it away. It could be 13. It could be 9. Now we're going to give him to the punters. Now we're going to give it to, a kicker. Yeah, he turned it into his own thing, and we actually paid more attention to it during that time because it became a trinket. It wasn't just like, okay, it's Black Shirt Day, first team defense. Now Tony White has returned it to something slightly more boring, which is the top 11 guys are going to get him, and that's basically that's all it's going to be. Bo's the one who, Bo was the guy that kind of messed with it, and I think diminished it as a result. Like it wasn't. It was almost like I don't like it that much or something. Who knows? I don't even know.
Well, Bo didn't respect Nebraska in a lot of ways. But regardless of that, back in the day, Charlie McBride, we had better access. We were able to go to all the practices. Of course, there were like 5 or 6 of us back then. But you found out there were black shirts when you went to practice and they were wearing them.
Right.
That's how you found out. And I agree. Bo was the one who started all the questions because he kept moving the target or
they got to earn them.
The standard. He kept changing it, and so we had to ask. Well, what is it now? So, anyway,
there used to be a TV reporter. He doesn't cover the team anymore, who had a penchant for asking one-word questions. I don't know if you remember who this was, Evan.
Oh yeah.
But he'd be like, Bo, black shirts.
Yeah.
And then he would answer the question. Or he'd be like, motivation. That would be
adversity.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Bo would be like, yeah, that's right. Anyway.
That was good. No. So let's chew on this a little bit. This is the last non-game week podcast. We're not going to get into record predictions, but let's chew on some bold predictions,
Bold.
like informed, but bold. Maybe something that you've observed through camp, just something that kind of stands out. I have a few, but I'll give you one to start. I think Ja'Cory Barney is going to score a special teams touchdown for Nebraska this year. That's one example of a bold prediction, and they've scored like 4 in the last 8 years, really since. DeMornay.
That's about as bold as it gets.
Well, J.D. Spielman had 2.
One.
He had a punt return against Bethune-Cookman, and the kickoff return against South Alabama.
Arkansas State. That's
right.
He didn't play in 16.
That's right.
You didn't play in 15.
And they technically had the blocked punt return against Indiana. So
that's 3. And then last year, Quentin Newsom, Tommy Hill giving the high five after they blocked the field goal.
Right. Well, there you go. So it's rare.
I think Blatchford had something too, but maybe that was longer than I remember.
I mean, really, outside of DeMornay Pearsonell's freshman year and what Spielman was in 2019, they haven't had much of it. And so I think what we've seen from Barney, he was an early enrollee. He talks about running 22 miles an hour, which feels like a slow drive through the neighborhood, but that's an awfully fast run through traffic. I think they're going to find a way. That's one of my bold predictions, that he's going to be able to flip a game or a moment either through the punt return or the kickoff return.
Tom said he had a bold prediction. What do you got?
Yeah. I think they're going to have 3 all Big Ten players. Jamal Banks, Tommy Hill, and Ty Robinson.
I like it.
They're going to.
I like that.
A receiver, yes, because they're going to throw the heck out of it.
Okay.
And they got some good ones, and they're going to. I think Raiola's going to have a favorite. He's going to have a guy that he goes to, and that's going to be Banks.
Is Dylan Raiola going to be the Big Ten Freshman of the Year? That's tough, right? Because that's 18 teams full of freshmen.
I think he's going to have ups and downs. I think he's going to have a lot of ups. I don't know.
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one. He got the hype. Well, a lot of times going in, that's about who is hyped.
Right.
Who do you know going in, and did he live up to it? Well, he's probably going to live up to it. If they go to a bowl, he's going to get a lot of credit, and he'll probably be that guy. My other bold prediction is they're going to go undefeated at home.
Undefeated at home.
And who does that mean they're going to beat? And I'm not asking Tom that. Evan, you have the schedule. I know the teams, but I don't want to be the know-it-all.
We'll get the last home game.
Yes, their schedule.
So one of my bold predictions feeds into Tom's.
UTEP, Colorado, UNI, Illinois, Rutgers, UCLA, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my bold prediction is they're going to beat Wisconsin. This is the year they do that. And they've come very close. The last 3 years. In 2021, they lost 35-28. Questionable, maybe a potential pass interference call that wasn't called. They lost that game. In 2022, they should have won that game. They should have beat Wisconsin that year.
Oh, yeah.
They should have won that game. They lost 15-14, I think was the score, right? That was the final, 15-14.
I believe that's right.
And they won that game. They outplayed Wisconsin for 3 quarters, and they just didn't have enough at the end. And then last year, I thought Wisconsin earned that game. Even though Nebraska went up 14-0 early, I thought Wisconsin outplayed Nebraska for really the last 3 quarters and earned the victory. And I thought, in some ways, Nebraska played maybe its best game of the back half of the season that day. Better than they played against Purdue. Purdue was a mistake fest, and they were just kind of lucky that Purdue didn't take advantage of any of that. And then after the Purdue game, they lost to Michigan State and Maryland and Iowa. And they also lost to Wisconsin, but I thought they played well. I think they'll beat Wisconsin. That's bold prediction number 1. And I think bold prediction number 2, and I don't know that it's a positive prediction, is I think you're going to see at least 2 kickers and 2 punters in 2024. At least 2 kickers and 2 punters.
Well, the kicker competition's continuing
It
into
is.
game week.
You could see 3 kickers. And they've done a terrific job of talking about this. Like, I think Ed Foley did a really nice job. What was that, yesterday?
Yeah.
And Rule's done a good job of talking about it, too. I want to be clear that I don't think it's really a coaching issue. I think it's more a guy got hurt, and when he gets in a game situation, I don't think we know yet. Because once you get in a game, then all of a sudden, and Tom's a golfer, so he understands this. You get on the course, and all of a sudden you got an approach shot, and it isn't the same. Like when you're, I don't know, maybe you're playing for $5 or whatever, and it's just not the same as at the range. And so, I think Alvano's going to be tested that way, and I think they like Hull a lot, and I think Ottomanelli's pretty good. So, and then with the punter thing, we'll just see. I don't want Buschini to get hurt. I just feel like they got to give somebody else a chance too if Buschini is off early.
So I have one kind of off of what you're saying, Sam. But first, so how many one-score games do you think Nebraska's going to play this year?
No, I have no idea.
12 regular season games. Like, are you expecting a lot?
I wouldn't. I don't know. I hadn't thought about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, let's wait till they start playing and see what kind of offense. And I don't know. I mean, special teams plays into that. If you're not making a lot of field goals,
right,
it's going to be tight. My prediction is they're going to learn how to win them. I don't know how many they're going to have, but the game at Wisconsin last year was they didn't know how to win. They didn't know how to finish.
Mm-hmm.
This year is the year they learn how to finish. And even if that means 6-6, it doesn't look as good when you can't have a winning record. I think they're going to learn how to win those games.
See, I would say one of my bold predictions is they have a losing record in one-score games. So, like, if they play 8 or 9, I think maybe they break 500. And the reason I say that is, one, what we're talking about with the specialists. Like, how confident are you that Nebraska can win the net punting game, the field position battle, that they can hit a clutch field goal when they need to? And then I think the other part of it for me is I'm just not convinced that turnover margin's ready to be an asset for Nebraska. I think offensively they're not going to give it away nearly at the rate they did a year ago.
Sure hope not,
I mean,
for their sake.
Just mathematically, I think that's likely. But I wonder how much more the defense is going to take it away. It's largely the same guys. They kind of have been what they've been, really good against the run. But can they get after the quarterback? Can those pass deflections turn into interceptions? I don't know. I'm just not sure about it. So I still think they're going to be in a ton of close games, and maybe they're going to be 500, maybe a little less. That's a bold prediction. That's not so positive.
So let's say they're in 8 one-score games, 4-4.
Yeah.
So here's an additional question: of those one-score games, how many of them are against Ohio State, Iowa, and USC? The 3 best teams they play are on the road.
1 or 2.
Okay. I mean, Iowa, I think you can just chalk it up as a one-score game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Nebraska's going to lose that game. If I was going to pick it right now, nighttime, Kinnick Stadium, that doesn't favor Nebraska. Iowa's a good team. I do think they have an outside chance of beating USC. I really do.
I do too.
I don't know. We'll see. And then the Ohio State one, my reflex is that won't be a one-score game. That Ohio State is probably 10 to 14 to 17 points better, and they have a hell of a coaching staff. And I'll take Ohio State by 17 in the horseshoe. I think that's what I might have predicted, actually, is they'd win by 17. So, yeah, I think there's going to be 4 or 5 one-score games, but I actually think Nebraska has an opportunity, Evan, to take a few of these games and put a little padding on them. I think they can beat Colorado by 10.
It's been a while.
10 is not 30. I think they can beat Colorado by 2 scores. I really feel like they can beat Illinois by 2 scores. I don't think Illinois is going to be very good. I think that Illinois is a 5-7, 4-8, 6-6 team at best. And defensively, Illinois does not have the football players they did even last year. I think they can beat Illinois by 10 to 14. So there's a game that turns into a more open game. They beat them by 13 last year, and then I think they can take Purdue on the road. That's kind of bold to say they would beat Purdue by more than 7, but I think there's some opportunities there where they don't have to be one-score games.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. They haven't proven it, and they've done it in the offseason. I keep thinking back to even that open practice that the Chasing 3 documentary put out, where Matt Rule's like, we've been doing it this way behind the scenes, and now there's a few people in the crowd, and they turn around. I wonder how that's going to translate to game day.
Keep in mind, Evan, all of us have forgotten what it's like. Well, I remember a little bit when this thing was, when they were winning. And that's why the first 4 games or whatever at home are so important. Winning is a habit. Doing things to win games is a habit. It's a confidence. This program hasn't had confidence. Therefore, we don't have confidence in their ability to do this. So if they get off to a good start and they're starting to feel it, a momentum is a crazy thing in college football. Then they're getting one score game. They're going to win a bunch of them if they're confident. But it just we can't. Right now it's August. We're throwing things out there, but they can write the story in that early in the season. What's this going to be like? And now keep in mind that Matt Rule himself has said the big year is year 3. He said it's always year 3. It's year 2 is a good step, but he wasn't making any predictions other than I think he was trying to tell people don't go overboard this thing because it doesn't really kick in until year 3. So, but that's what's so interesting about this season is there's enough pieces in place that if they get momentum, they get a few breaks, they stay healthy, and they win those early games, anything can happen. So, either way, but I think, and I think it can happen positively. So, but just look at the last 4 years. They've started on the road, they lost. That takes the air out of the whole season.
How much do you think, Sam, the start of the schedule informs how you view this team? Like if this team was exactly the way that it is, but Nebraska had the schedule to start the year that it did last year, it goes to Minnesota, it goes to Colorado, how different is your outlook on what this team can be?
It's a little bit different. Yeah. I think when you start on the road to start the season in 2 different games, there's a challenge to that. And Nebraska lost both of those games. Probably should have won one of them. Definitely lost the second one. But yeah, I think it does change it a little bit. I think Tom's right. There's an opportunity to get on a run early. You're going to hear Matt Rule maybe even tonight on the radio. We're recording this on a Wednesday. Talk up UTEP. And he'll probably do that next week. But UTEP's in the very beginning stages of a new coaching era. Let's not kid ourselves. The line's going to be somewhere in the 20s. Nebraska is not playing the hardest opponent. They're not playing BYU 2015 with Taysom Hill, is my point. And so they should beat UTEP. We don't really know what Colorado's going to be because we have no sense of what their defense is going to be because it's a brand new defense, pretty much. But Colorado will be a good test. They have a good quarterback. They have an NFL caliber quarterback, and they have good coordinators, and they have a clue. They do. They have a clue. They have a clue on offense. I don't care what anybody says. They scored a lot of points last year, and people forget that the Pac-12 was the best Pac-12 that the Pac-12 has ever been last year. That was a very good 4-8 team. That was a 7-5 team in the Big 12 if you switch them to the league that they're in now. So Colorado's not terrible. And then you have UNI, and they should bury UNI. This is not vintage. UNI is not in the top 25 of the FCS, enough said. And then that's not a great Illinois team. That's an Illinois team, and I've watched a lot of Bielema preseason stuff. I do that. People know that I'm weird, and I like watching coaches, Big Ten coaches, and their pressers. And Bielema's pretty – he's combative with the media. They're getting ready for this to kind of turn in the wrong direction, and so I think Nebraska can win its first 4.
Yeah, I'm going to write for Sunday. Keep in mind, too, when you're talking about the easy schedule, that's what everybody else is saying about Nebraska.
Yeah,
that's a gettable game. Even in Lincoln, where they've forgotten how to win, we can go in and get one there. So they're all saying that.
Well,
so they prove otherwise.
What people are not saying that about Nebraska is with Nebraska volleyball. That's another juggernaut. That's a team that's now number 2 to open the college volleyball season behind Texas. They have the scrimmage this weekend, and then they open on the 27th against Kentucky, a ranked matchup to start the year. What is this just sort of business as usual for Nebraska volleyball, the juggernaut, or what are you guys looking to see from this team early in the year to further inform kind of how high the Huskers can go?
Oh, I look at this as, you don't see this as much in college football, but you do in college basketball when there's a lot of new players and there's a rotation that has to be figured out. I look at the first month of this as like a college basketball non-conference schedule, and where, you know, a lot of times you don't know what you have until Christmas. I think in volleyball, you don't know what you're going to have until maybe October, in terms of who's going to play. I mean, the other night John Cook was asked all these questions about who's going to do this and that, and who's going to play. And he said, I don't know. He said, I'll know a lot more after the red-white scrimmage. You know, how are they going to perform? How are they going to react? So they've got an embarrassment of riches. That's the only embarrassment you'll ever hear about Nebraska volleyball. It's they've got a lot, and they have the people they brought in, the All-American from Minnesota. I mean, they've got these incredible players, and so who plays? And you know, and how does Harper Murray? How does she fit in and react? But they're coming in on an incredible high for a program that lost the national title game. People are still talking about the stadium match, and now this ESPN documentary is coming out Friday. They're the model program in college volleyball, and so I find this interesting. I'm writing about this a little bit for this week. Is this a championship or bust a situation? Like they did everything last year. They won the Big Ten. They had number 1 seed. They went to the national title. They went to the Final Four and won big in the semifinal, and then they lose. And they get swept in the final. So really, basically, they have to get back and do that again with all this talent. And I think in some ways they've already won. I mean, again, they keep winning in the preseason. They keep doing things nobody else has done. This ESPN thing is supposedly an unbelievable show. So nobody else gets that except them. So I also think, but there's a lot at stake. Lexi Rodriguez, an all-time player. Merritt Beeson, these are all-time players. They have to be a part of a national championship. If you're part of the Nebraska volleyball lore and the history, the best players a lot of times won national titles, and so this is the last chance for some of them. So, to answer your question, I think they're going to be great, but there's 6 teams, the top 6 in the poll, can all win national title. That's going to be who delivers down the stretch. And to me, Nebraska volleyball, they won the Big Ten. They've done all this stuff. They've beaten everybody they played. It's about where they finish, how do they end. And so to me, the season is setting it up for the big finish, so that they can beat Texas this year. They can be the one who goes into the final and gets hot and just wipes somebody out.
What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, Texas volleyball last year was kind of like Connecticut basketball 2 years ago, where, like Connecticut, this most recent national title, they just sort of mowed over everybody, and everybody thought they were going to win. Like, literally, everyone finished their bracket with UConn. But the previous year, I think UConn was like a 4 seed, and they just mowed over everybody. And that was kind of what Texas was. I think they were a 2 or 3 seed in their region, but they kind of mowed over everybody. I think, related to Nebraska, the schedule is harder than it was last year. Last year was a very magical ride, not that hard in the non-conference. In the Big Ten Conference, obviously, all the really good teams, but didn't kind of had these incredible comebacks at Penn State and Purdue that made the record look a little bit better than it was, and then, of course, they lose to Texas. I think Nebraska has a chance to lose more matches this year but win the national title. That'd be the way that I would put it. If they lose 4 or 5 matches during the regular season, they might still get a number 1 seed. That's how hard their schedule is, and I think that's how good some of the teams they're going to play are. So don't panic if they lose at Louisville on ABC. Don't panic if they lose to Creighton. It's the best team Creighton's ever had. And Creighton knows Nebraska really well, so they have a chance to come into Devaney and maybe pull off an upset. Don't be surprised if they lose at Oregon. They have to play at Oregon. There's going to be some moments in there. The Purdue coach at Big Ten Media Days said, we're a top 5 team. He was bold. He's like, we're a Final Four team. So there's a chance that Nebraska won't win as many matches, but they will win the ultimate match. And then I think, the way Tom said it, there's some competition at spots. At outside hitter, you have Lindsey Krause, Harper Murray, and Taylor Landfair. And to hear Cook say it to the media on Monday, Landfair is still learning how to adjust to the team's training style and adjust to the team's, drill work. And maybe that might affect – he didn't say that it would affect her playing time early in the season, but maybe it will. And then they brought in a middle blocker to compete with Andy Jackson and Rebecca Alec. And so now you have this sort of battle there where it was probably pretty set who it was going to be. I think now Layla Blackwell, who's also learning the team's culture, has a chance to play. So you could have a little bit different lineup in October than you do now, just like Tom said. Like you could have a little bit different setup by then. I think there are a couple things that are true about that team. One, they're incredible in the back row in terms of defense. Letsy Rodriguez, Lainey Chopoy, Olivia Malk, and according to John Cook, Maisie Bosinger. Those are all your defensive specialists. They're really good there. And B, they got a quarterback that actually doesn't get a lot of attention because she's very smooth, and that's Bergen Riley.
Yeah.
They had an issue, and they didn't have an issue at setter. They had great setters for many, many years, but I think Riley is the best one since Kelly Hunter. And those two things are true. Nebraska's going to be a factor. They're going to be a lot of fun to watch. The ESPN doc is very good. It's not necessarily what people expect. People are going to think it's a lot about Volleyball Day. It's not. Volleyball Day is over in 2 minutes. It's before the opening credits of the documentary. They are done talking about Volleyball Day, and they are on to the season. And there is much more time spent on Harper Murray's story than there is on Volleyball Day. And there's more time spent on Merritt Beeson's story than there is on Volleyball Day. So, it's more about the season. It's an exciting documentary, and I'm curious to see what Husker fans think of it. It's good. It's going to be an incredible recruiting film. Recruits will love it because they'll be like, I want to be Harper Murray, even with all the things that went on, and they talked to her about those things. She still is very compelling, and she comes off kind of like a celebrity.
Cook said that they ESPN showed up at Volleyball Day and were overwhelmed by it, and they said, well, we need to come back and do all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So that it was born on Volleyball Day, but it isn't about that.
I think, Tom, your point about championship or bust, it feels like the urgency does ratchet up because last year's team was younger, it was newer, there were no seniors on the team, and now you look at the roster and it's Lexi Rodriguez, senior, Lindsey Krause, senior, Merritt Beeson, senior.
We have
Taylor
some
Langford,
breaking news.
Senior.
We got to announce.
What do you got?
Nebraska football announces on Twitter that Dylan Raiola is the starting quarterback.
Oh, okay.
On Twitter. So we can count on Matt Rule talking about that on the radio tonight. It just says Dylan Raiola will start at quarterback for the Huskers versus UTEP. And that's it.
With a picture of Dylan Raiola throwing a football.
Raiola.
Wearing number 15.
Wearing number 15.
Well, that's how you do it now, Sam. Sam's all fired up.
Hey, I mean, it's an interesting way to do it.
We knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Would you call that understated, like an understated way, or like because
I'd call it a thoroughly modern way to do it, unless you're going to do it on the radio show. But why do it on the radio show when you can splash it on social media, where recruits go to hang out, and that's what you do now.
Yeah, I mean I was curious how they're going to do it. If Matt Rule was going to do it.
That's how they did it.
And now he's not having to be kind of the face of the moment. This is the moment.
It's almost like a headline, too. It's not like, they did this fancy video where it's like him holding a football and peering into the camera. And it's just a picture of him throwing. He's going to be the starting quarterback.
Maybe this says more about me, but like the lack of punctuation at the end is fascinating to me. There's no period. There's no exclamation point. It's
Okay.
it's like someone sent a text. Dylan Raiola will start at quarterback for the Huskers versus UTEP.
Yeah. I think we're overanalyzing all this. It's a story. He's the quarterback. He's going to be good. He's going to have good and bad days. And, yeah, that's what you do in 2024. You throw it on Twitter. And you don't put a period on it, I guess. I don't know.
Sam, you just tweeted with an exclamation point.
News!
Exclamation point.
It's like that's. It's like I'm Elaine from Seinfeld when she wants to put exclamation points after everything.
Yeah.
That Jake Jarmel.
Right?
Remember?
Oh, yeah.
This is news.
I feel like I get like 2 or 3 exclamation points a year, and like you got to pick your spots with those. You can't be too gratuitous.
Evan, I'm more of an exclamation point kind of person than you, man.
Not in your writing, though.
No, but like
that's what I mean.
Just in my general,
well, sure,
my
texting
general,
is a different
my
thing.
voice and my ludicrous nature. I'm a more absurd human being. You're a much more normal person than I am. I'm troubled.
I put a lot of periods at the end of sentences, but you got to mix in the exclamation points.
Do you use a lot of semicolons?
I use a few, not in day-to-day life. Tom, you're not an exclamation point guy.
Oh, I can be. I don't think about it, I guess, once in a while.
Well, we can end the podcast with no punctuation.
You think he's gonna have a good year?
You are listening to the Pick Six podcast. Yes, I do.
You do?
But like I've said about Raiola, like I don't think it's about him making spectacular plays. I think it's about him being a game manager. Don't turn the ball over.
Yes.
Hit the short stuff. Hit your guys in space. Let them make plays, and he'll probably show off his arm talent, certainly. But like that to me is like if you can just do baseline stuff, they've got the team around him. They have the line around him to succeed. I think it's an ideal situation for him to come into.
He's not going to be judged on whether he's Dylan Raiola this year. He's judged on, are you a winning quarterback? Make plays, win games. Some games that might be handing off, getting in the right play. Don't turn it over. Yeah, I think he'll have a good year, but it's going to be ups and downs. He hasn't been. I mean, in spring game he wasn't rushed. He wasn't blitzed. He's probably not getting a lot of that in camp. Let's see some of that early on. How's he?
Right.
He'll probably react fine, but yeah, I think he's going to be really good this year, and then he can build off that. Maybe he'll be great. We'll see, but he didn't have to be. He didn't have to be Superman. Just win games.
Any closing thoughts, Sam?
I think that's good. Yeah, I for Sunday I'm doing the rewind. I'd always do the stats to watch. One of the stats that I'm going to say everybody needs to watch is YAC, yards after catch, because I think Dylan can make some of the short throws, and can his receivers make guys miss? You know, like how much do they help him? He needs help, like Tom said, to be just be a winning quarterback. Don't try to do more than you have to. Can the guys around him help him out? Like can they I'm not talking about making impossible catches. I'm like catch a ball, make one guy miss, and get 7 instead of 2. That kind of stuff. So what do they do around him? Because I think Dylan's got a lot of talent, and I think some of the year that he has is going to be determined by what the guys around him do.
Dylan Raiola is your starting quarterback for UTEP next week. We'll be back next week to talk some Miners.
Yeah.
And dive into this season. It's almost here, guys.
Picks. Tom's got to come back and defend his title.
We're going to have picks. Tom's going to go easy on us this year. It's going to be awesome. You guys are awesome for listening. Thanks for doing it. For Tom and Sam, I'm Evan. This is the Pick Six Podcast.